Okay, welcome to the Swing Trader with Cycles channel. We're going to do an update on natural gas today. It's December 17th. It's a Saturday. And so we have our full weekly candle, last or second to last weekly candle of December, really kind of closing out the year 2022. Exciting stuff. Previous videos, we've talked about the long-term path of natural gas potentially, and we're going to see it's obviously ever evolving. We're going to talk more micro here, since this is really just kind of an update. If we start with the daily chart, most important is to know where you are in the cycle, right? So this cycle here was 33 days. It topped out on day 5. And then, I mean, you can do the math then, right? If it's a 33-day cycle and then topped out on day 5, that means it declined for like 28 days, right? That's really rough. And you can even start to kind of think, and again, I talk about this like it's like, think about the shorthand. How long did that rally last? Okay, it was a little 18% rally, right? Which is pretty not great for natural gas. And you could even say, oh, well, actually, this is a little cycle low. And yeah, I could see that, right? We bounced a little 13.7%, but obviously then failed to new lows, right? That's important, right? So either way, we had this whole bearish period, and then we had this little rally for 22 days, right? That's what this 22 is. It's marking this. I don't have an arrow. I don't always put an arrow against the swing highs or swing lows, but that's what the numbers mean, right? And so this rally lasted 22 days. And mind you, notice this thing. I'll zoom in here. Look at that thing. My God, very bearish. This like gap down. I mean, well, I guess it wasn't a gap down technically because it was still inside this range. But like, I mean, this is such an ominous candle. But then we go on and make a higher high above that, which is interesting. But then we collapse below it. So this was like kind of an ominous, sort of a harbinger almost. But that was day 22. And then we dropped into a cycle low on day 30. So that was actually right translated. Not too bad. And more importantly, it didn't give back the whole rally. I mean, it gave back a lot of it, right? If you like, basically we did, right? If you we did that, and then we did this, right? So we didn't give back the whole rally, but we did give back a lot of it. And now we're doing this, right? And we are just kind of pausing here. I mean, I'll get rid of this thing. But I mean, look at this consolidation. And we talked about this in the previous videos. I mean, just seesaw, up, down, right? After this big, beautiful green candle that made a slight higher high, but then pulled back, right? So that was your kind of tell. Pulled back. We then get a red day. It sells down, makes a new low, but then recovers. I mean, look at this wick. Gets below the 10-day moving average also, which is interesting, right? So that was day 8 of this new cycle. And there's no like, oh, it has to be a certain number of days. Like, forget about that kind of stuff. The point is to understand where you are in the rally. This is day 8 of the rally, which means we're either going to get something that's more like bullish like this, or we get something more bearish where this thing fails and it becomes and because so far this rally is actually the high is actually not, it's just a coincidence really. I'm not like, because I don't like, it's not like they're like quote unquote cycle gods or anything like that, but this is day 5, right? So this is day 1 of the rally, day 2, 3, 4, 5, that where we have the high so far. It's just a mighty coincidence that this last daily cycle topped out on day 5 as well. But as long as we can make a high above 7, 10, 11, or call it 7-11, right? That's an interesting number. And this is a natural gas futures, by the way, in terms of quoting price here. But I mean, this is, as I said, look, it is a bull flag, and this is a higher low to this. We did give back a lot of the rally, but it is what it is. And this thing has obviously had kind of a tremendous run, and this period is just kind of digesting it. Because this, what is that? Like from here to there is your 169% gain. So it makes sense that we're now spending time chopping around here. And let's not spend too much time on the daily time frame. We'll kind of zoom out. So again, we're on day 8 of a new daily cycle, which means we probably have another like 20-ish trading days to go. And so it's a question of how long is the rally going to last. So if we look at the weekly cycle, right? So this looks like a weekly cycle low on week 16. Let's add the 10-day moving average just for shits and giggles. Okay, so you can see it's been declining aggressively because you had this huge move down. That was the move, right? Like that we were just kind of looking at on the daily to some degree. Now we had this little rally up. It wasn't without, I mean, look at this. That's a really bearish candle. That's to stay long. Like, I mean, that's tough. And now just zeroing in, this candle here, that was last week, is week 7 of this new rally, right? But if this is really just, if this whole thing is really just part of this route, this cycle here, it would be week 23. And at this point, I think that's more and more unlikely that this is a new weekly cycle at this bottom on week 16. That would be the week of October 24th. And so it's a question of, is week 4, is that right? Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, this is week 5 actually. Yeah, that's week 5. Well, no, actually, because that's your low, right? So it is week 4. Pardon. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, right? So that's week 4 of the rally that's made the high, and that's what we need to get back above to make a new high on the weekly. We obviously have another number, and that's at up here at $7.60, right? We obviously have to make that higher high on the daily that we already talked about to even have a chance of getting to the 760. And so that's where we stand. And I've just drawn this little arrow. Like, this is an important little swing low. Again, that's your higher low. That's on the weekly chart that you can see very clear. We need to hold that. And so it's going to be an interesting question of where do we open next week? And more importantly, what do we do next week? I mean, the broader markets seem to be moving into a weekly cycle low. So I would assume that things get pulled down with it, but obviously, you know, things could buck the trend. We'll have to see. And so that's your weekly. And to think about the monthly, important. This is like we go green on above $6.97. So if we can get to $7, this monthly candle goes green, and we obviously are running out of time on the month. So it's really going to be a question of thinking about how January opens, and think about what we're doing here. We're setting up for an inside candle for January, right? Like something, right? Like, so it's going to be a question of, do we get something? It's going to open inside, but then it can, you know, things can happen and it can break to the upside or downside, right? And so that's going to be your sort of, so it will be interesting. And in that case, you'll really be looking at lower time frame price action for your cues, because this is going to be kind of directionless inside, like, and because this is also kind of inside the range. Like, you can almost kind of think of this as a combination candle that kind of, or really these three taking out all of that, right? So this is really just chopping around all inside here for the most part. So that's your monthly setup. And also the idea, as we talk about in every video, that this is your long-term cycle top. And so do we really get out of this chop zone, or do we maybe we get to the upper end of it at the 760 range, but then that's all we get, right? That's still a pretty big percentage gain. And let's turn our attention now to Boyle and UNG. So these things kind of give you exposure to natural gas, you know, the practice. Like, we'll do Boyle first, and I'll just, none of this is ever trading advice or investment advice or financial advice of any kind, but know that Boyle is a leveraged ETF. And so if you look at, like, this is your monthly chart, I mean, you can see it's down only. It's like a crazy slope. Now, we've had this bull market in natural gas, and so you've had these rallies, and when you zoom in, you can see you can kind of make money in here, but just be careful. You don't want to park money here. It's a trading vehicle at best, right? And so that said, I posted this on Twitter. We've had these three rallies, right? We had this rally that went about 63%, this rally that went about 70%. These are the most recent ones. And then this most recent rally was 66%. And then we printed a swing high by going below this level, right? Because that's our candle that marked the high. And then we went below that. And so we now have a swing high. I'll get rid of these figures and I'll add arrows because I hope that's helpful for you visually. You should start to see this as you get more familiar with this stuff, right? All swing highs. So we made a low. So we're still below that level. And just to be really clear, that level is 39.58 for a boil, right? And so what I said was, when you think about it, with those rallies, you're either going to now turn lower because you've gotten to your cap that's about as good as a rally is going to get, or you're going to have some kind of like real breakout, like something like that, right? Like, you see that, right? So it makes it very binary, which is good, right? It's either, oh, this thing is going to fail, all right, because it's gotten to its 70%, it's gotten to its 66%, it's over, or no, this thing is going to the moon. And that's if, obviously, we can get back. We need to get, at the very least, we need to get back above this swing high, right? And we can zoom in on lower time frames to try to get a jump start on it if one were sort of more aggressive. But, something like this move, and what's this move here? Right, so that's interesting, right? That's another 70% move. So that's an important way to kind of think about it. So that's a 37% move. That's a tiny one. That's a really feeble one. And so you can start to kind of think like, oh, and obviously, the ideal scenario would be to catch some piece of that 70% move as well, right? Like, as much of it as possible, risk adjusted. But knowing what you're looking at, right, and putting that in context is super important, right? Like, mitigate some of that emotion, right? So that just gives you a sense of some of the rallies. And obviously you've had these massive declines. And so you want to be aware of where you're jumping in, right? Am I about to jump in to get a piece of this 176% rally that's already underway? Am I, right? Or are you just kind of getting in halfway? Because obviously this little rally, 25%, it's like, oh, great, that could go to 60, right? But this one did not, right? Like, so, and obviously you knew that by the swing high, right? Like, so at the end of the day, to be clear, it's about observing the price action, right? So that's Boyle, and that's looking at the weekly, right? And again, these things are trading vehicles, so you don't really look too much deeper in terms of the longer term because it is generally in a downtrend. But if you think about what the weekly cycles have been, right, going back like to sort of 2021 even, you have this, right, like you could make money here, right? So like it would seem that we just had our low on week 22, right? And so after a top on week 7, so a brutal decline. And again, this is a leveraged ETF, so hopefully no one's really riding this thing down from 115. This was a kind of a double top though too, so that's a little bit ominous, right? But again, this is a leveraged ETF. This yellow line is your 200-week moving average. So it makes sense, I mean, that it's sloping lower for something like this because it is down only, we talked about already. But like, you could, that's your 400% rally. That's a little 198% rally. So this is just a minor, that's your 81%. So, and this is just like a little minor lower high before the final low, right? And so you're now saying, well, shucks, can we get something like that, like here, right? Like that, right? That would take us back to like, call it, what is that, like 77? Yikes, wow. That's interesting. And even that would actually be a lower high. Notice that, right? Like that would actually set you up for another, like, okay, well, this thing is just going lower, right? Like sloping lower, but still obviously great money from here, right? And again, like, so let's look at what is that. So we looked at the daily. If we kind of zoom into the hourly, let's see, is there an actionable signal in here? Okay, so The daily clearly sloping lower. And so on the daily level, right, so that's talking about that, sort of early signal. This is your candle you need to kind of get above. Like first, you really need to get above this one after that, but you like obviously need to get past this one before you can get to this one, right? So this candle has a high at 34.90. So that's only about 30 cents above here, right? Like some kind of buy stop in that area could work. And then you have the high of this candle, which is 35.75. So that's about $1 more. But I mean, you think about the potential upside. I mean, some kind of buy stop there, and then some kind of so let's say you get in at, let's say, the $36 kind of situation, $33 stop loss. That's interesting. I'll say full disclosure, I've never really traded natural gas one way or another. I may start now. I mean, it's definitely presenting itself as an interesting opportunity, especially given it managed to stay green while the rest of the market was red. Because again, I do think the market is moving into a lower low. So that's Boyle. And the monthly is red, and that's important to know about as well. The monthly goes green at 45.97. I mean, we have so little month left. That would be a furious rally to get back to 45.97. But it also tells you that in the same way patterns don't always complete on that time frame, you could see a path to $46 basically to get back to the opening price for this month of December, even if that happens in January. So that actually could be interesting. So finally, we'll do UNG. So same kind of idea with UNG, obviously much more muted in terms of the rallies. So this most recent rally was at 32%. We've had other ones in that similar kind of boat. But then, of course, you have this kind of rally. What was that? That was 73%. And if you were able to hold on and make it to this higher high, of course, selling the Pico top is impossible, but somewhere around 90% is what you have to kind of work with almost, right? And so that tells you, again, are we going to stop here and kind of roll over? Which, to be clear, what we're really saying, similar to the natural gas, is on day 8. So it's like, are we getting an early daily cycle top that's about to roll over? Or is the daily cycle going to be longer, more robust, and have a longer advancing phase? Those are the stakes, really. And on the weekly, it's really the same exact picture as Boyle, right? So I don't have the numbers labeled here, but that's your swing low. That marks your potential weekly cycle low. Looks like a pretty good candidate to me. Like here, right? We have to stay above. So if on UNG, that would be above 1948. So call it 1950. That's what marks your swing low on this. And obviously, we had a red candle last week, and we dipped below it at one point, right? Now, we have to maintain that. Otherwise, this thing is going to keep rolling sort of downhill. And looks like we closed below our 10-week moving average or right at it. So not super strong. And also note, this sliced right through the 200-week moving average and then popped back up. That could go either way. And that's why, again, you look at these kinds of moving averages and that kind of thing as like a secondary kind of metric. And finally, for the monthly open price was $21.65. That's not even that far from here, right? So that would be what makes this month go green. And again, we could get that price in January. Same kind of idea. We've got to get back above that price. And then ultimately, really, we have to get above this cluster here. So on UNG, that level is right around 24.30, right? That's your kind of gateway to the hollow. like if you can get above that, then you could see a world where we start. Like look at this, look at all that wick, right? That's just massive selling once we get up to those levels. But like that gets you into the $29, $30 kind of area after a move above, call it 24.50. So that's a good upside, right? Like kind of buy stop kind of situation. That could be interesting. That's UNG. And of course, again, Boyle is a way to play it more leveraged, a little bit riskier. But even though this isn't sort of leveraged per se, it's been down only as well. That's important to note. But it is like, this is a set of little higher lows, right? It has started an uptrend. That's unmistakable, right? If obviously assuming this holds, right? Like this thing is trying to set up to keep moving higher, right? Like it's done this and this, right? So the expectation is that, something like that, right? Now, I'm not saying we're going to get to $120 natural gas. That doesn't make sense, like structurally. Like, so it's going to settle down at some point. So I like, but, like maybe it's more like that. Because I think commodities in general probably aren't long for this world in terms of like really, like not, I mean, it's hard to imagine the prices stay elevated for an extended period of time. Like that would just be bad for humanity. So I guess I'm saying that would, like, hopefully that's not like the case, because that's just not a good kind of look. You would think like at the very least innovation takes you, like takes that kind of off the table. So maybe even something like that, right? But the point is, we can use price action to pinpoint those buy opportunities as they come, and we'll use that to recognize if we do print a long term cycle low. Like maybe that's all we're gonna get, right? Like that, right? Like maybe this is our low, and this thing is gonna move higher, because really all we're talking about is making higher high above here, which would be 34.50 first. Like that's step one step at a time, as they say. So I'll leave it at that. That's our natural gas update over the weekend, making sure that we're looking at some of the actionable vehicles, Boyle, UNG, and I'm sure there are like obviously individual companies that benefit from liquefied natural gas and that sort of thing, and I can start to review those as well. But I wanted to start with these because I think they're probably a more popular, easy way for people to get exposure. So thanks for watching.